College football is here, so we're back on the big mountain to give you a preview of the Sam Houston State versus UNLV football game. I have a very special guest with me, Lane Fobbs. How you doing, bud? Thanks for joining me.
I'm all right, brother, man. It is college football season. The wait's over. I'm just ready to jump right back into it. And this is Sam Houston's first quote home game. And
Yep.
we can get into why I did the quotes later, but I'm just glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, real quick, tell everybody where they can find you. You are the Bearcat Bites newsletter,
Yes.
independent. I love it. We're independent on the mountain. Tell people where they can find you.
So, Bearcat Bites newsletter. That's what I do. It is the Bearcat Bites newsletter. It is the only independent year-round coverage of Sam Houston football. There are other great outlets that cover Sam Houston sports, but they cover all of them. I focus on football. That means June 10th, I'm gonna have a football newsletter for you. You know what I mean? The only time is in March, only because that's my anniversary time with my wife. But other than that, we're gonna be here talking Sam Houston football. It is the Bearcat Bites newsletter on Twitter, X, whatever you call it, at Bearcat Bites, at Bearcat Bites, and all the links are there. YouTube, um, Facebook, all of it is there.
Sweet. I'll make sure I put it in the description. Let's get into the game here. I want to hear
Yeah.
about Sam Houston. We're a Mountain West channel. I got a lot of Rebel fans that follow us. They're going to want to know what the heck are we getting into down here in Texas. Let's talk about the offense, maybe the good and the bad coming into this game. Can you fill us in on where the offense is at?
Well, it's interesting you talk about it, the good and the bad. When I did my position grids on the newsletter, many of those positions I gave a C. There were things that you could see there that possibly could be, but there was a lot of bad that messed up. And a lot of that comes from the fact that this is a brand new coach. These are mostly brand new players. I mean, about almost 60 new ones. And a lot of these guys came in June. So that's tough. That's
Yes.
going to be always tough. And now you've got a new coach. The former coach, Casey Keeler, he is at Temple now. So in comes Phil Longo, the former Wisconsin offensive coordinator. He has this air raid tag to him. There are air raid concepts, but it is more of a running balanced attack. It is much more something a little closer to a run and shoot. For
Okay.
those who are familiar, it's a little more closer to that. And you kind of saw that during the game with Longo. There's his North Carolina transfer Elijah Green, who got in the game just a little bit. He had some good early runs, but overall the running game was not great. They have another transfer from the University of Houston, Alton McCaskill, had a great freshman year in 2021, but then really struggled to kind of find his way in the ensuing years. He had a good touchdown leading drive, but overall the running game just was not great. So again, seeds are there, but where is it going? Where is it headed? Can it improve? Same thing with the quarterback, Hunter Watson. Hunter Watson is one of the very few returners, by the way. He won out the starting job over Marbury Matur, a Wisconsin transfer who had came down with Phil Longo. There was some good there. There was some good from Watson. He's a guy who does not mind ducking his head and running, and sometimes to his detriment. He missed a few games last year, injured with an injured shoulder. But the thing about him is he presses too much. Again, when Western Kentucky started to go ahead and get kind of crank it up there towards the middle of the third quarter in the game last week that they played in, it just kind of started to fall apart for Hunter because he wanted to force things. And you could see a very bad interception where he throws into Western Kentucky's double coverage. So again, there's some good there, but what is it going to look like? Probably the worst part. And if UNLV, and I know the defense didn't play great last week,
Yeah.
if there's an advantage that they could probably find is going to be the offensive line. And that reason with that is because the Sam Houston O line does not look great. So the defensive line for the Rebels may want to check that out because their starting center, James Dawn, second team all conference last year, he's out. He's going to be out for a couple of games. They're saying he'll
Okay.
come back around the Texas-ish game. I would say that's kind of what my sources are telling me. But the problem with that is the entire thing is falling apart. The Sam Houston offense wants to run tempo. And by the way, the quarterback looked okay. Hunter Watson running some tempo. But the entire problem with this was there was not enough there was not enough focus and tempo from the offensive line, and that led to penalties. There were a lot of second and eights, third and longs. That was from the offensive line, I should say.
Yeah.
And so the entire question is going to be, can they clean that up? The good news is, hey, you got a week to clean it up. You make your biggest jump from the first to second game, coach speak, right? The bad news is the defense for UNLV, who didn't play great, they can kind of do the same thing,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, you mentioned a couple things there. The first one, you started off just saying new coach, new players. That's both sides here, right? Dan Mullen's coming into UNLV. They've had a dramatic turnover of players as well. So interesting. We have two teams here that look extremely different than they looked just a year ago. So just wanted to mention that. The other thing you mentioned tempo, and it makes me think back to San Diego State last year. Coach Lewis there was coming in wanting to run this Aztec fast as he had done in the past. He brings in an old running back that had been in that type of offense. But really what held them back, and you hit it here with Sam Houston, was the offensive line. The O-line wasn't able to keep up with that type of offense. And yeah, you might have a running back that's able to do that, but if your O-line isn't prepared for that type of fast offense, it just, as you said, it holds everything up. It throws everything off. They can't make that offense be what they're expecting it to be. So I'm not saying they're exactly the same, but when you said that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds like the Aztecs a year ago. And you mentioned, UNLV here giving up 555 yards to Idaho State. And, everybody goes, oh, that's an FCS. And, the haters of UNLV want to just throw as much shade as they possibly can. 555 yards, I don't care who you're playing against. That's a ton of yards that they gave up. And some of that, early on at least, was in the running game. I mean, they were gashed for some massive runs by the Idaho State team. However, the Idaho State offense turns it over 4 times, right? So you kind of mentioned turnovers there for Sam Houston. I mean, this is one thing that I think the UNLV defense is going to have to live off of a little bit, especially here early on. The bend don't break. And they were close to breaking last week, but they got the dub, and that's all that matters. But also being able to turn other teams over, right? Especially I think in the secondary. The secondary was my biggest question mark coming in. I actually thought the secondary played okay. I mean, they weren't stellar, but I thought they played okay. It was the D line that maybe, again, having some of those huge running plays that Idaho State could have. So I'm anxious to see how both of these teams, maybe kind of line up against each other. UNLV has a ton of stuff to fix. Lord knows they're going to want to do that, right, as soon as they possibly can. And they now have game tape. They're now able to, make some adjustments. And, these players, especially here with the defense, there's a ton of talent there. There's a ton of experience there. It's a question of maybe both sides. How quickly can these teams gel? Because they're so new. They have new coaches on both sides. They have a lot of new players and just especially the line play, the offensive line play. Man, you got to play together to get that to work. And as you said early on, June is when some of these players are coming in. That does not give them a ton of time to do that. So I'm anxious to see that side of the ball. But man, you talked about turnovers. You looked at the defense, and I went, holy cow! Like literally, I think almost everybody's gone from the defense of last year, and they had a very solid defense. Let's turn the page on this. What are your expectations here in this game for the defense? Like what were you able to take out of the first game and kind of going into here the second game?
Again, kind of the same theme a little bit, the mixed bag. Now,
Yeah.
it's kind of the opposite of what you said about UNLV. Now, the front seven surprisingly played well, and that was the question mark for Sam Houston. The defensive backs, which is what we all said, hey, they might be pretty okay. In my preseason rankings, position rankings in my newsletter, I had them ahead of the running backs overall.
Wow.
I
Okay.
was wrong. At least for this game, they got burned and exposed in man coverage. As soon as Maverick McIver and his OC Rick Bowie in Western Kentucky, as soon as they realized, hey, they're playing us in man, let's just take them down the field. You've got guys lost, well, not necessarily lost, but burned, I should say. That's
Yeah.
a better word for it.
Yeah.
A lot of that is just, just a surprising, a lack of talent a little bit. That's really just what it is, a lack of speed. I would expect, and I would ask UNLV fans to look at how much zone Sam Houston decides to run.
Mm.
because they realized the hard way. Like there was nothing that they could really do with the coverage, you know. So we're gonna see because when things were underneath, when the Hilltoppers came out underneath, Sam Houston was actually able to do pretty well. They were
Okay.
able to disguise coverages a little bit. Their new defensive coordinator, Freddie Autry-Lindsey, that seems to be kind of where he works well within that 5 to 10 yard range. It's like, okay, yeah, you think your guy's open, but we're gonna send a guy speeding at him to hit him when he doesn't see it coming. And it worked to perfection. The turnover for the touchdown that the defense got, the takeaway touchdown. So that worked, and that was a function of their front seven, which played again surprisingly well. Phil Longo last week was pretty excited about the defensive line. It's shockingly to me. But
Okay.
off season, we had kind of heard these things trickle out about them. The first was from places like Dave Campbell's in Texas that said that there was critical lack of depth. If somebody gets hurt, these are all new guys. They're too light, things like that. And then we started hearing about Bruce Feldman's freak list. You see Dylan Frazier on there from Sam Houston.
Yeah.
Zaquee Lawton played well. So there's a shocking ability there. So, and which is good because Jet Thomas got busy for
Yes.
UNLV. So
Yes.
that's one of my keys to the game. Watch out for him. And I feel pretty good that they can do it. And then the linebacking core, it looks to be the early strength of the defense, kind of the literal heart and soul of it. That's where their leader, Antavius Fish, the Akron transfer, he played very well. He set the tone. Even coaches just rave about him.
Mm.
CJ Brown, who was more in the secondary, but they bring him down to help, and I would expect that to continue just a little bit. Um, he's been listed as somebody as well, a Bowling Green transfer. He's been listed as someone who's really just kind of taking everybody under his wing and things like that. So that's contributed to a very nice front seven. That room is kind of huddled together and gotten close. So that was shocking. So we'll see. We'll see how much if they can keep that going and if the defensive backs can improve.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see what UNLV does here with quarterbacks. Of course, they have Alex Orji and they have Calandria. I was impressed with Calandria in game one. Alex Orji had that early turnover there at the half-yard line or whatever it was, fumbled into the end zone, and then didn't see the next few drives after that. And I was surprised how well Calandria ran. And we had a preview show here with UNLV, and Tony told me, this kid can move. He's not necessarily known as a runner, but man, he had some speed. He had some really good moves. And you mentioned Jet Thomas, man, when that kid finds a hole, Jet is the correct nickname for him because he just takes off. Not a big dude, but a super fast dude. And yeah, it'll be interesting. You kind of said there that the front seven's maybe the strength. So do they try to really button up the run game and put it in Calandria's hands to make some passes? And if that's the case, if they're going to kind of make UNLV pass, I think that's where you're going to see Calandria play much more than Orji. He's just a much better passer than what Alex Orji is. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what happens there, especially in that, like you said, the secondary where you thought was maybe going to be a big strength and didn't turn out at least in game one. So let's get down to the nitty gritty here. Do you have kind of what's the biggest question? You mentioned a couple things, but coming into the game, if you have like just a huge question mark on this team here coming into this game, what would you say that is for you?
How much progress can the offense make from week one to week two? That's my biggest one right there. Because in the post game after Western Kentucky, Phil Longo said, "quote We have to we as the offense have to help the defense." They
Hmm.
were on the field for a long time, and that was a function again those third and longs, and
Yeah.
we wrote the book on that. So that would be my biggest question.
And then what do you think the biggest strength is? You mentioned a couple things. I did see your write up. A lot of people were touting the running back room, and maybe they just didn't show up there in game one as what you and others maybe would have expected. Is that still maybe the strength, or where are you at with what the strength of this team is here headed into the game?
The strength, it would have to, as crazy as it sounds, and I would not have said this 3 or 4 months ago. The front seven right
Okay.
now, tonight, It is the front seven. Well, let me be specific. It is the run defense
Okay.
because they did struggle a little bit in pass rush, a
Okay.
little bit. So I would say the run defense is the strength right now.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how they handle that. So, to me, the biggest question mark for UNLV, it's broad, but I got to say defense. Like, what's going to happen here? You know, they allow 555 yards against Idaho State. Are they going to do the same thing here against Sam Houston? Are they going to make some adjustments, make some fixes? And I don't mean, make this be 500 yards, have a dramatic decrease in yards against for the UNLV defense. And the strength to me is I'm gonna put it on the quarterback. I mean, that's an easy answer, but I think given what you've said here, if the front there, the rush defense is the strength of Sam Houston, I'm gonna say let's put the ball in Calandria's hands and let him sling this sucker around a little bit and see what he's got. And I think he can do it. So I'm gonna say the strength there is at quarterback for UNLV. We'll have to wait and see and play the game, but the last thing I always I got to ask all of our guests here if you have any sort of predictions in terms of over unders or anything like that. You have any prediction on what you think might happen in this game?
Oh man, so this is gonna be Sam Houston's home opener. It's gonna be they're playing in Houston, couple hours, an hour and a half or so south of where Huntsville is,
Yeah.
the stinky, smelly, humid city. UNLV's coming down there with Dan Mullen, the celebrity on TV.
Yeah.
I will say UNLV wins it 34 24 because
Okay.
that would be a push. The line is 10.
Yep.
People upset.
That's how Vegas likes it, when people
Vegas,
are
baby.
upset. Yeah. Yeah. So the total points there 60 and a half. So you're going just under, 34-24, just under. But again, you're right there at that line. I'll tell you what, we do pick shows Wednesday evening, so I'm not going to give my pick on the spread. I'll pick the spread. I actually already picked it for those that watched. I actually took I went 12 and a half. I had UNLV at minus 12 and a half, and that will be my pick. I don't, say, oh, I'm going to adjust it now because the line changed. I took them at 12 and a half, and I'm going to stick them at 12 and a half. But I might be making a betting pick on the over under that 60 and a half. I got to think about that a little bit more, but I may pull an over under bet on that sucker as well. So, Lane, hey, thank you so much for joining us here on the Big Mountain. Love to learn about who these Mountain West teams are going to play, and best of luck to Sam Houston there.
Hey, you guys, well, pleasure as always. I love the West Coast to meet the best coast. Love you guys.
Awesome. Well, hey, we thank you guys for watching this. Make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you subscribe if you like our content, and make sure you check Lane out. I'll have his information in the description of this pod. So with that, hey, we'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.